and welcome everybody to my very first ever speed paint. Here it is. This is a postcard of a Titan launch, specifically the February 1997 B24, if any of you care. Already sketched out, already covered in masking fluid for the time. Honestly, I didn't think that I could sketch and or mask that on camera. So there we go. This postcard is an Etchr postcard in cold press. Honestly, that's what I paint on most of the time. So there you go. And then I'm using beam paints. So these are a handmade paint out of Manitoulin Island in Canada. They are honey based, but they have pretty much the exact same properties as you would expect out of any other watercolors. I'm using Prussian blue here for the sky, and we'll add in a little bit of their yellow ochre color, which she calls harvest wheat, and then fall poplar yellow for this launch cloud, as it were. And then we're also going to add some orange, and that orange is called bread, if anybody cares. So that's what's going on here. It was a little bit of a process. You'll notice that everything's kind of at an angle. That's because I've got my Canon DSLR set up above my desk with a ring light on top of it so that it's well lit. The focus is a little bit, could be better. Let's put it that way. It could be better, right? So my apologies for that. It'll get better if I decide to try these some more. But yeah, so we're doing this first layer here. It's all very wet into wet, just essentially letting the colors flow out and do what they want to do. So I've got some general guidelines, but other than that, it is very much a let the watercolor do what it wants. I think that's the best way for watercolor paintings to look like they're actually watercolor. So that's fun. I used a inch angled brush to flood out the sky area, and then the brush that you see me using here is a size 8 velvet brush, silver black velvet, yeah. So obviously I let this dry. We're starting up again. We're going to do the second layer on everything. Because of the way this image is lit and the fact that it was taken in 1997, what I'm using as my reference image here, the rocket ship itself is orange, so we're putting a base layer of orange on there, and you'll see me kind of struggle with that on and off throughout the recording here, so it gets better. Just bear with the ugly stages with me. But I really love doing these launch clouds. I think they're so much different than doing just like normal sky clouds. Same techniques and everything. You could use very similar process to do just normal sky clouds, but the white point, you can see my masking fluid there. I did attempt to talk through this, but it was like an hour worth of footage, so I did my best to cut out as much weird hand movements as possible. But the center of a launch cloud is that whitest area, so as you go out, you get all of these different colors and shadows. And actually, as this goes on, we'll put some gray tones, actually the same Prussian blue, and then some Timberwolf, which is what I'm going to use as my darkest colors here, in that far edge of the launch cloud, which is, I think it turns out really well. I think clouds are meant to be multiple colors. I think that's the way that they show up the best. And to have a really bright area, I think really helps that. So I find them really fun. I'm not 100% sure what else to talk about as we go through this, because there are a number of layers on this, the cloud itself, and then here on the Titan rocket. This is kind of an interesting setup I've got going on here. You'll notice that I've got the postcard taped to a board, and some people will use like an acrylic board, some people will use just like a piece of like the like corrugated material that they make signs out of. Here you can see the grays going on that far side of the cloud. So that's just a mix of the Prussian blue and the Timberwolf, which I'm going to use here in a second as well. I'm going to put that same shadow color on the rocket as well. Let's anyway, my apologies for the pauses. I promise these will get better. But the board that we're set up on is actually just a piece of an old cardboard box that I have added a like a plastic poster board on top of, and then you can see that I've taped off the edges with a just a painter's tape, and it works really well. It keeps all the moisture out. Also, it means that I got it the exact size that I wanted. I actually have a bag that I carry this in, so it's made specifically for that bag. But you can use whatever you want. Just make sure that it's not, that the water's not going to seep through it. So like a straight cardboard probably wouldn't work super well. But I find this is a really great thing to tape your paintings down to as you're working on them. It's quite the jump there. I did let this dry between layers, and I've cut out all of that dry time, so there are some weird jumps in here. Again, we're working on figuring out what the best way to do this is. If you've got any suggestions on how you film things, or you have any thoughts of what might work better, let me know. Because I think this is going to be a little bit of a journey here. So happy to have you along the ride. As you can see here, we're just adding the foliage. So again, this is based off of a launch photo. Yeah, and obviously you can't take photos super close up to a launch because of lots of reasons. There are some, but this one's not. So it's actually through a series of foliage. The one thing that I wish I got a little bit better on this is that down at the bottom, closer to the launch cloud, you've actually got like a heat wave coming through because of that. And so the foliage is much more, it's not quite as sharp where everything in the top corner is, because you don't have that heat wave affecting that area. So there are some things that I wish I did better on this. That's one of them. But as we continue through this, I think this frames the image really well and gives kind of a dynamic composition. So there's that. This color that I'm using is a mix between Prussian blue, Timberwolf gray, and then a little bit of Mars black, just because the watercolors tend to dry lighter than what they look like put down, and that's because they're diluted with water. And I just was not getting the contrast that I wanted, so I added some Mars black into that color as well. So you can see some more branches there to the side, and then we're going to add that second pylon, the one that's closer to us, here shortly. You see the pylon in the further back is all lit by the I guess the launch itself, and then this pylon that I'm drawing in at the moment, which I was really terrified to do around the camera because normally I'm like right up in the painting to get lines like this. And it turned out okay. This one's backlit though, so it doesn't have the same coloration as the back one does. So I hope you enjoy this. I know it's a little different, and it's not necessarily a tutorial. I guess you could try and paint along with me if you wanted to. If you do, I'd love to see it. My Instagram is probably the best way to get a hold of me. So if you do decide to paint something similar, I'd love for you to tag me at Exploration Creations on Instagram. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. This is kind of like a trial run of, you know, what my setup would be, how easy is it to paint around, you know, what is in frame, what is not, what else do I need to worry about. So I think in that regard, this turned out really well. I think the postcard turned out okay. There are definitely some things that I would have done differently and or better. Here I'm taking the masking fluid off. I know there's a tool for this. I don't have it, okay? I just use my fingers. The Etchr postcards are 100% cotton, and I've never had an issue with them ripping with the masking fluid or the tape, actually, which is a big deal. I know a number of other materials that do have major problems with this. I know the Stonehenge paper has always ripped for me in one way or another. I try and stay away from using a ton of masking fluid on that, but the Etchr ones never have. So if you're curious, I love them. Let's see. Here I'm adding a little bit more of that bread color, the orange, into the rocket itself. And I'm doing that so that we get more of a rounded effect. So the highlights didn't quite do as much as I was hoping they were gonna do. So I'm adding a little bit more intensity to that lighting. Again, I think it could be better, right? I think there's a number of things that kind of went off here. I think right underneath the payload there's a cut-in up there at the top, so in the center portion of the rocket there's a cut-in, and I think that needed to be a lot brighter. At the end I did actually go in and add some white gouache to enhance the areas that I was struggling with. The other thing I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to put some clean water on certain areas that should have been highlighted, and then I'm going to take a paper towel and I'm going to dab those areas off, creating a much more rounded effect. It is, again, it is what it is. Most of the work that I do at this point is postcards, and this is just one of them. At the end of the day, if I don't like it, we'll move on to the next one. But this is something that I really enjoy painting. I enjoy painting rocket launches. I am a space kid. Not so much a kid anymore, but I am a space kid. And so a lot of these older images are actually come from my dad's collection, which is kind of fun. I thought this would be a good one to start off with, just because it is kind of thematic. So there you go. It's part of the reason that I am Exploration Creations, I guess. There's a long story behind that too. Maybe someday we'll tell it. But Yeah, we're about finished up here. I'm gonna take the tape off after I fiddle with it some more, and we'll see how it goes. And then I'll show you some up-close shots of it. So, again, thank you guys for all the encouragement. It's really a combination of you guys and all of my dear friends over on Instagram who have asked for some paintings, so we'll see how it goes. And we're just taking the tape off here, and then here's the final product. We'll bring it up closer to the screen for you and try and get my camera to focus. So there you go. Again, this is a Titan rocket launch from February of 1997, and on an Etchr postcard. There you go. Thanks for joining me, and again, if you have any comments or suggestions, I'd love to hear them. Also, join me on Instagram. We're doing a 100 days challenge that I may have taken a week off on or something, but we're doing a 100 days challenge over there. I'd love for you to come join me, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.